first I want to say how long we've known each other and how much our friendship has meant to me. I have great respect for what you've accomplished in terms of creating community and in terms of grounding your politics in your theology and your general values and commitment to living a life of loving kindness as well as productivity. So it's an honor to be here. I mourn for lost opportunities. For example, the inability somehow of the Democratic Party to truly embrace women's issues as primary on their agenda. It has to take a Me Too movement, or it has to take the loss of Hillary for people to suddenly say, hey, you know, women aren't really equal, and there is still a patriarchal system, and the language is full of it, and our religion is full of it, and the workplace issues haven't gone away, and childcare is still a problem. Feminism made a mark on American life. We could have fashioned a presidential campaign based entirely on, we need a Democrat because we need, in case of a death on the Supreme Court, we need a Democrat to name the successor to the deceased. That could have been central because it would have distilled everything that hangs in the balance, all the unachieved dreams and goals that end up somehow in the Supreme Court being refined and rarefied, have been in the hands of these 9 people. And now all the talk about expanding the court, it's sort of, you know, closing the barn door after the horses have gone. So I have that regret. I don't know what to blame myself for. So when I do Shuva, I look at a life of activism. I sometimes feel bad because I can't name my faults because I don't think I could have done better, or I tried as hard as I could with what I was capable of to raise consciousness, to write about it, to march, to demonstrate, to sign petitions, to pay for ads, to do everything I thought was effective to effectuate these goals. And I don't know where I could have done more. So, but as for movement work, I put all of it out there and it didn't help. So I'm somebody who sat on the White House lawn about 20 yards from the handshake that we thought would change the world. That is when Bill Clinton stood with his arms up and around the shoulders of Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin, and they signed the accords. And I thought, wow, did the work, struggle, got through the struggle. I'm witnessing now the fruition. And of course, I did not expect a backlash. I did not expect Donald Trump. I didn't expect the unraveling of agreements. I didn't expect the expansion of settlements. I didn't expect right-wing governments in Israel to be so ferociously opposed to equality, even to 2 states. Even though I've seen everything backslide on Israel and everything turn upside down on feminism, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not buying ads and I'm not signing petitions because I've learned that what counts is getting out the vote. The only thing that saved us from Trump was votes. Votes got us out of Trump. Petitions didn't. Marching didn't. It all comes down to the ballot box. They're trying to stop us from getting to the ballot box because they understand that's where change ultimately happens. So if you're doing tshuva and you identify with any of the things I've just said, the most important thing I think you can do, you can atone by simply saying, I am going to knock on every door and ring every doorbell and sit in dank and ugly election, gathering places and make sure that we make phone calls and get people to the polls and hire cars to take people who are infirm and doing all the things that the Republicans are trying to stop us from doing, including to give people water. That's the embodiment of it. They won't let us give people water if the lines are long, and they're making the lines long because they know that the old and the sick and people who are poor and had to leave their jobs are the ones that are going to vote them out. So they don't want us to drink. They would like us to expire right there on the line. What a devastating experience it was for me to be excluded from the minyan at the Shiva for my own mother when I was 15. I was 15 in 1955, so of course women weren't counted in the minyan. Women weren't rabbis, women didn't have aliyot, all of that. But my father, who was a Talmud scholar and a Baal Korek, I mean, could really cantillate beautifully, did the Torah readings. He made little cut corners for his own Judaism. But in my living room, the first night of the Shiva, he would not cut a corner and count me in. Even though he had educated me very well for a girl by that light, and even though I had been bat mitzvahed and I had been told that I am now a daughter of the commandments, and I'd gone to Yeshiva of Central Queen, I'd gone to synagogue weekly, if not daily, I left Judaism because of it. It was my first feminist rebellion that my father would bar me from counting, even in the presence of our friends, when there were only 9 real Jews in the room, only 9 men. And my father called the shul to send a 10th man, who came and didn't bring a yarmulke and didn't know where to find prayers and, just past the physical. I didn't recover from that for 15 years because even though I detached myself from the collective Jewish community, every High Holy Day season, I bought a ticket for an overflow service at any synagogue I could get myself into in the Upper West Side because I needed to say the we. I couldn't do that alone. So I very much identify with the we. It's part of who I am. I'm a we, not an I. If women are not free inside their own skins, we aren't free at all. Freedom starts with the body. So we have got to work state by state by state to make sure that individual laws abrogate the Supreme Court's decision in rejecting Roe. We have to support women who can't afford to go to abortion-friendly states. We have to destigmatize abortion. We have to, as Jews, educate ourselves that abortion is halachically legal in cases where the mother's life is in danger. That rabbis have always, quote, cut corners, though abortion is not desirable, have looked at the circumstances of a family and a woman's life and have permitted abortion, even what we call now partial birth abortion, which is the dismemberment of a child to save a woman. The woman has a life. We don't believe that you get born with the original sin or that you get born innocent or any of these things about the fetus that would create priority for either a bunch of cells or an infant. Am I not right, Rabbi, that an infant doesn't become a person in Judaism until the 30th day of life?
Yeah. Although some of us joke and say it's not until they have graduated from medical school.
So that whole issue of choice, it seems to me, is both Jewish and American and belongs to every ethnicity and race. Because if you're not free inside your own skin, if you don't feel that birth and babies and children are so important that one must be ready for them, to give them love and to give them financial and spiritual support, then it's irresponsible. And I would say child hating to force someone to have a child. And of course, Barney Frank famously, the congressman from Massachusetts famously said, the ultra-right is pro-life before birth, but not after. It comes to a stop. They're not interested in child health and welfare and food and housing and education. So to me, that's the telltale. In terms of poverty, when I read the statistics of how many children go to bed hungry, I relate to things most viscerally when it's a child who suffers. It just how I approach things, and maybe because At 15, I couldn't believe that so much suffering was happening to me, that the loss of my mother could hurt that much, and anything could hurt a child that much. So I relate through children, and the idea that they're sleeping under bridges, that they don't have a light to shine on their books, so of course they're not doing their homework, that they're taking care of their own baby brothers and sisters, and so they don't have time, or they're taking jobs. All of that exists in this, the so-called richest country in the world, is such a shanda, speaking of shandas, that it almost something beyond my capacity to understand how we live with that reality. In terms of just human relations and how debased they are right now, the loss of dignity, the loss of the recognition in the other, in Judaism, I remember learning about the Lamed Vavniks, that there are 36 just men, but I make it just people on the planet who hold up the world, and we don't know who they are, and we don't know if we are one, but we must act as if we are one, and we must treat everyone as if they are one. So if that were the rule in the current climate, we would not be saying grab them by the pussy. We would not be calling Mexicans rapists. We would not tolerate somebody describing a Black neighborhood as a sinkhole or whatever. Our cancel culture would be that. We would cancel people who are inhumane and who are insensitive and who inflict pain, psychological as well as physical pain. I'd say those are my top three. Well, I was in Jerusalem at the first International Jewish Feminist Conference in 1988. And that was the first time Women of the Wall brought a Torah to the wall, wore tali tot to the wall, and ran a service that was halachically workable and acceptable to all streams of Judaism of the women who were there, from Blue Greenberg, modern Orthodox, and for all I know, there was somebody toward the other side of Blue, all the way to secular Jews who were there for the feeling and the, connection and all of that, who didn't necessarily have a grounding in Jewish life. And that experience changed a lot of people's lives in terms of challenging the Israeli government. And the courts in Israel, the Supreme Court ruled that mind you, women were not asking to integrate the male side of the wall. Although I have to say, I keep on my desk a picture from the 1920s when the wall had women and men standing together. The Western Wall, when it was called the Wailing Wall. Women and men side by side with their sidurim at the wall. So this was not always thus. In any case, that wasn't our goal. We weren't looking to push down the mechitza and integrate the man side. We just wanted in our space to be able to fully realize and express our spirituality, and to have someone else deny you the right to your own spirituality is a kind of fascism. So the Supreme Court seemed to recognize that and ruled that we had a right to a separate place. It wasn't at the wall, but it was at Robinson's Arch. And still the Haredim were throwing chairs and throwing feces and screaming and asur, it's forbidden, and women among them. So it's a shanda, and I count that and the general hegemony of the Rabbanut, the power to control the personal status that's been given to the Orthodox in Israel, I think is, again, dehumanizing. The way they call Reform Jews not Jews, it makes my flesh crawl to think that Jews could treat other Jews that way. How they treat the other Palestinians, for whom that land is holy, precious, in their family for 300 years, 500 years, olive trees that are hundreds of years old, farms that they despoil, Jews marauding come and and cut down olive trees and foul their land and bar them from their land. How does a Jew do that? It's so beyond me. And yet we don't speak out. Yet we call that being a self-hating Jew if you critique the government or the habits of segments of Israeli society. So I'm pretty much a purist on that, not on a whole lot of subjects, but on that when Jews treat other Jews in a shameful way and treat the other, who we should be identifying with, as stateless and landless and people who had a dream and that dream has been dashed, and to view their humanity as somehow or other a zero-sum game, like if they gain anything, we lose, is a failure of intelligence. And I always thought Jews were smarter, as well as a little exceptional in terms of, having a very heavy weight of morality that we have to maintain. So I'm ashamed. I am ashamed. And I wish I could do tshuva for everybody who dehumanizes another human being.